for today's Toastmaster Leadership Institute. I would like to recognize some dignitaries in the room, our local dignitaries. Is Heather Watson here today? Our district director, Tina?
No, she's not.
Okay. Well, we miss Heather, and we wish her the very best. We have Tina Tate, our current program quality director, who's soon to be our district director. Go, Tina. Linda Vorthman, our program growth director. We have our incoming program growth director, Tommy Price, and of course, our incoming president, international president-elect, Matt Kinsey, who you will hear from shortly. If there are any other, and I know we have other dignitaries in the room, past district directors, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, that's me. And let us know what your past accolade is. Club Growth Director, Sandy Malone. Anybody else? I would love to give you recognition. Oh, of course, Baxter Kent, past district director. Who can forget Baxter's wonderful year? It was very inspiring. Becky Fisher, past Club Growth Director. Judy Young, past District 32 Director. Boy, we have a lot of dignitaries in the room today, aren't we fortunate? Steve Kennedy. Hey, Steve, past District Governor. So we changed the word from governor to director in somewhere in the 90s. Was that right? If you know that year.
2015.
2015. Okay,
Yes.
More recently than I thought. Right. Steve Kennedy, Diane Herzl. You can read these all in the chat. I suppose I don't have to read them all to you, but look at all the, we have half the room filled with amazing dignitaries, leaders. And that is why we're here today, to learn more about becoming leaders. Kind, courteous, graceful, poised, professional, respectful leaders. The reason that I asked you to reflect on how you would like to be described if you were to overhear yourself, in thinking a lot about this idea of legacy, I'll just put it out there. I know this sounds probably strange, but I love funerals. If you love a funeral or a great memorial service, put a Y in the chat. It sounds strange, but I've been to many funerals of people that I don't even know, because the one thing I do know is that when I leave that service, I feel inspired by the stories that I've heard about this person, and I'm standing way in the back. Okay, I'll disclose, I'm a videographer, so I'm usually hired to stand in the back with my camera to record these legacy stories, not only for the family that's there, but also for future generations. What I often hear are stories that no one else has heard. They're stories that have been kept in somebody's mind and heart because that person who's no longer there has inspired them in a way that evokes emotion. And it's really that emotion that seals it into the heart and the mind. How we make another person, how another person feels when they're in our presence, So that's why I love my job, when that is the favorite part of my job, when I'm allowed to do that, to witness another person's stories, and they inspire me and everyone else in the room. Legacy, I think of as a 2-lane road. It's paved with inspiration. So let's just call it Inspiration Avenue today. And as we trek down Inspiration Avenue, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker for this morning. If you ask 100 different leadership experts to define leadership, you'll probably get 100 different definitions. However, most of the principles will be similar. Our presenter today has been a business and community leader for the past 30 years. Over that time, he has developed his own definition of leadership that he believes works for the 21st century and beyond, based on timeless principles that he has learned, often the hard way. Here with a question: are you a leader? Please welcome International President-elect, Distinguished Toastmaster, Matt Kensey.
Good morning, everyone in District 2. It is a pleasure to be here. And as Rebecca asked, are you a leader? Now, I know many of you, probably the majority of you in this room today, have a leadership position, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're acting a leader. So today we're going to develop a definition of leadership through stories, through anecdotes, to help you ask that question of yourself. Are you a leader? Now, my first leadership lesson came very early in life. I want the athletes in the room to raise your hands. Or my favorite people, that I used to be an athlete. Well, like most kids growing up, I wanted to be great at sports. And Tina, I was terrible. Have you ever met anyone who struck out playing t-ball? Well, if you haven't yet, you have now. And after one baseball game, I walked up to my dad and said, "Dad, I want to run home." My dad looked at me and he goes, "You want to run home?" I said, "Yeah, Dad, I just want to run home." Now, we lived in a very small community, less than 350 people. In fact, it was so small that when my parents moved in, they doubled the number of registered Democrats in the town. And I guess my dad figured everybody knows everybody. Somebody will pick him up when he collapses on the side of the road, because it was 3 miles from my house to the baseball field. And so my dad got in his car and he took off and waved at me. I waved at him and I took off running. And I got home, I opened the door and my dad puts his paper down. He looks at me and he goes, "Who picked you up?" I said, "Nobody, I ran home." "Matt, I think we found your sport." So I got into running and I loved it. If you're an endurance athlete, you know that feeling, that feeling of being out on the road, the runner's high, they call it, where the chemicals in your body just make you feel great, even though you're putting out a lot of effort. Finally came the day for my first race. And there I was on the starting line. Starter raised her pistol. It went off and I felt, how many of you remember that television show back in the 1970s, the $6 Million Man? Yeah, you know, no, 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 no. And that's when I realized that that's how fast I was actually running, because all of the boys were passing me. And then all of the girls. Out of 173 runners that day, I finished 173rd. I was humiliated, defeated, borderline depressed. And I walked up to my dad and said, "Dad, that's it. Sports is not for me. I quit." My dad looked at me. And you might have thought he would have said something like, "Well, Matt, you can't quit. You made a commitment." Or Walt, did you ever hear someone say, "Matt, you know, winners never quit and quitters never win"? No, he looked at me and said, "Well, Matt, you can't quit. Your team needs you." What? Dad, I couldn't even see the short little girl who finished in front of me. Nobody cares that I was here today, and no one will care when I don't show up tomorrow. I'm done. And my dad just kind of chuckled. He said, "Well, Matt, first of all, that short little girl, she feels a whole lot better today because at least she beat you." Thanks, Dad. But more importantly, when you go back tomorrow, and you will, no one else has an excuse to quit. Your team needs you. Now, I've thought about that a lot. I think as we get older, we actually reflect on the things our parents tried to tell us. And I think what my dad was saying is similar to what John Maxwell says, is that leadership is influence. But it's more than just influence. You have to go out and exercise your influence. You actually have to use your influence to try to change the thoughts and minds and actions of others. So as you see, we're going to be developing this. So the first part of our definition, and if you're astute, you might be able to figure out how many parts there are by the positioning, but the first part is exercising your influence. But where are we going? And how do we do that? Well, positive feedback. Now, this is something Dr. Smedley stumbled upon 120 years ago, that positive feedback was more effective than negative feedback in changing people's behavior. So IBM found that when they switched from negative feedback to positive feedback, their employee engagement increased 3 times. A Gallup study of organizations found that those that practiced positive supportive feedback had a 20% increase in sales, almost a 30% increase in profits, and almost a 75% decrease in turnover, which is one of the most devastating costs to an organization. Now, the best ratio was actually 6 to 1, 6 positive comments for every critical comment. So with all due respect to the sandwich evaluation method, don't sandwich a leadership evaluation. And it's really hard to get a 6 to 1 when you have to have that crucial conversation with someone on your team. So what I have found is your positive feedback needs to be regular and consistent, and look at it over time. Because if I'm constantly giving Tiana positive and supportive feedback, when I do have to have one of those critical conversations, it lands much better because she knows I'm not always critical of her. I'm also very supportive of her. So she has that, we have that relationship, hopefully, that she understands that this is because of what the team needs and how she needs to change her behavior or change her performance to meet the needs of the team. So how do you do that? Well, these are just some ways. Are you genuine? Have you ever received feedback that you didn't really think was genuine? Some of you are about my age. We remember when the 1-minute manager was all the rage. You know, catch somebody doing something right. And I can't tell you how many leaders I worked with who you could see in their mind like, oh, I got to tell them something good at the end. And they would say something and it was completely meaningless because they were just realizing, oh, I didn't give them any positive feedback. That doesn't help. Show appreciation. And the more specific you can get it, the better. So I'm going to do that right now. So I've been working with Rebecca for the last almost 2 months trying to get this arranged. She has been so timely, so consistently reminding me of things that she needs from me in a positive way without making me feel bad, that it's encouraged me to be positive about being here at this event today. Now, I could just say, thanks for helping me get set up, and that might last a few minutes. But the more specific I can get, the more lasting impression it's going to have on somebody. So hopefully she'll remember that feedback a little bit longer. And again, I focused it on effort and behavior, not about whether she was good or bad, but here's the behavior that I saw. Here's the effort she went to in order to make me look better today. And timeliness. If I waited until perhaps I saw her in Nashville, the impact's not as much. It's also tailored to the individual. See, I made an observation of Rebecca, and I could be wrong, but my observation was that she would be very comfortable with me acknowledging her publicly. And she seems to say, yes, I am. Some people aren't. So in those cases, keep it light and then give the better feedback directly in a private conversation. So leadership is exercising your influence in a positive and supportive manner. Now, I asked earlier, where are we going? Or another way to put that's what's the mission of the team, the organization, the group that you have? What are you trying to accomplish? History is replete with examples of those who have used their influence towards a goal that most people would say is not worthwhile. Things that tear people apart, things that put people down rather than lifting them up. And I'm sure you can think of examples in your own history of people that you felt that with. And there's certainly well-known names that I don't need to go into that provide that example. So let's take a look at Toastmasters. The Toastmasters international mission is to empower individuals to become more effective communicators and leaders. Now notice this mission says nothing about clubs. It says nothing about districts. It's talking about what we're truly trying to accomplish. And the Rotary Alliance is an example of that. This was a way for us to empower individuals, even though they weren't members of Toastmasters, to become more effective communicators and leaders. The district mission, for those of you who have a district position, we build new clubs and support all clubs in achieving excellence. And I often get asked, well, which is those is the most important part of the district mission? And my answer is, yeah, both. They're equally important. There's not one over the other. Now, we do have more control of the district of building new clubs than we have over supporting all clubs and achieving excellence, but the district needs to do both. And the club mission. We provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. That's why we've joined Toastmasters. That's why Toastmasters clubs exist. Now, I hope that one of those resonates with you as inspirational or motivational. If you're a club officer, the club mission is your guide to how you need to operate. At the district, you need to be asking yourself constantly, are we working and focused on the district mission, or are we getting distracted by other items? So leadership needs to be towards the accomplishment of a worthwhile goal. And I think the Toastmasters goals are very worthwhile because I can't think of a better gift that you can give somebody than genuine self-confidence. Now, there's more. Values. Values are incredibly important. Toastmasters has 4 core values: integrity, respect, service, and excellence. And we're going to talk a little bit about those very quickly. Now, integrity, we've often heard it said, integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. And with all due respect to those who would use that definition, that's kind of the elementary, maybe middle school definition of integrity. But really, well, let me just give you an example. So a year ago, 6 p.m., June 23rd, 2021, Surfside, Florida, USA, hundreds of families went to sleep thinking it was a night like any other, that they would get up in the morning, they would take their children to school, they would go have lunch with their best friend, go jog on the beach, just do normal, everyday things. And around 1 o'clock in the morning, they were awoken to a horrific sound, the sound of metal screeching, concrete crumbling, and people screaming as they fell to their death. Because when I woke up on 8 a.m., June 24th, 2021, this is the picture that greeted me on the front page of the Miami Herald. Overnight, the building collapsed. And this news soon made the national news and even the international news. The headline on the Herald that morning: disaster in Surfside. 1 confirmed dead, 99 missing. Many more fatalities feared after Champlain Towers partially collapses early Thursday. This was a year ago. This is 30 minutes from where I live. Now, the investigation soon came down to 3 main causes. One of those was a structural design. There was an internal issue with the way the building was designed and manufactured that led to the collapse. The second was a combination of rainwater and salt water. This is 100 yards from the beach. And if any of you live near the beach, you know what salt water does to your boats, you know what it does to your cars, your doorknobs, anything metal. So water and salt water were getting into the building and making this design worse. But the most significant was that the board of the condo knew that there was a problem, knew that they needed to act, and did not act. And because of that, people died. What's the salt water in your leadership? What is that external force that you're allowing to get in? Who's the person you're listening to who doesn't have the best interest of you and your team in mind, who's trying to perhaps control the situation? Our integrity is just like this. We have propensities towards certain actions that undermine our own ability to be effective. And in a little bit, I'm going to talk about one of mine. We all have those. And then when we listen to external voices that aren't aligned with us, that aren't acting in our best interest, it makes that propensity come to the surface in great numbers. But then do we clean it up? Do we take the necessary action when we fall out of integrity to clean it up and say, Rebecca, I'm sorry I didn't get that to you on time? Sometimes it's easy to fix, sometimes it's not. But are you taking that step? Integrity is an inside job. It's when your actions are aligned with your values and you're operating based on those values rather than personal gain. Now, respect. Some of you recognize this woman, the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, and her most famous song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. But what's really important is she says, find out what it means to me. Dr. Tony Alessandra calls this the platinum rule. Not to do unto others as you would have done unto you, but to do unto others as they would have done unto them. Probably the best example I can give you was a few years ago, I was announcing the district trios for the, no, I'm not going to sing it, Sandy. You do not want me to sing it. But I was announcing the district trios for the President's Distinguished or Smedley Distinguished Award. And there were many names there that I was not used to hearing. They were just names, I didn't know how to pronounce them. So I went out and I found every single person, no matter how their name was spelled, and I spoke to them before. I said, how do I pronounce your name? And I listened and I repeated it. I made sure I got as close. And every single one of them said, Matt, we know you appreciate it. Thank you. We know you're going to do the best job you can, but whatever comes out is fine. And there was a part of me that's like, well, I appreciate that, but I didn't believe them. And they proved me correct. Because when I got done announcing, they were waiting for me at the bottom of the stage. And they looked at me and said, you said our names perfectly. Thank you so much. So even though it probably would have been okay, I took that extra effort to say their names as closely as I could, especially for sounds that my mouth is not used to making in those combinations. And it meant a lot. Respect is not earned in Toastmasters. Now that there is a concept of earned respect, okay? But respect, in my view, what Toastmasters is talking about is that respect that every single person is due, to have their voice heard, to have their life experience validated. You know, just because you had a great experience with somebody doesn't mean that others haven't. All right, just because something's never happened to you and you've never seen it doesn't mean it isn't happening to other people. And I think about this when I see these political debates over these issues where we're greatly divided. And people don't come to these through irrational choices. They come to these based on their life experience. That's my experience anyway. And I think most of us, the vast majority of us, are just doing the best we can. With the way our parents tried to screw us up as we grew up, then we got our teachers involved and our religious leaders. Now we got politicians and television shows and all of these conflicting messages. And we're doing the best we can. So respect that life experience that others have, even if it doesn't match yours. Service sounds easy, right? I think most people would say, you know, service is giving your time, talents, maybe your money to help somebody else out. It's a very basic definition of service. But service, just like respect, is in the eye of the beholder. It truly is. So the best example I can give you was a restaurant, which I shall not name, that has very few locations left now. I don't know if there's any correlation, but there might be. And this was a restaurant. I worked in the middle of this plaza and they were at one end, and at least once a week I went over there. So they all knew me. In fact, I would sit down and they knew I'm a big Coca-Cola drinker. The waiter would come over with 2 glasses of Coca-Cola because he knew I would get one done so fast that he needed to have a second one ready for me. So he just brought him to begin with. Great service normally, but this day I did not get my normal level of service. The food was late, it was cold, and when I tried to find the waiter to pay my bill, he was gone. Well, finally he showed up and I just tried to talk to him for a minute. He wasn't getting anywhere, so I asked to speak to the manager. The manager comes over and he goes, I understand there's a problem. And I said, well, yeah, I want to tell you. He goes, I'm sorry, sir, I want to give you a free meal. I was livid. I mean, I got 3 words out to him and he's trying to solve my problem without even knowing what it was. And I looked at him and said, can you just shut up and listen to me? Now I was younger then. I'm not sure I would approach it the same way right now, but that's what I said. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, okay. And I finally told him what had happened. And I sat there and he kind of looked at me nervous. He's like, are you done? And I said, yeah, I'm done. He goes, okay. Never asked me what I wanted. And he goes, well, can I offer you a free meal now? And I was like, excited. I walked out and I decided, you know what? I'm going to call the regional manager. She needs to know what's going on. So I went through the yellow pages. Yes, yellow pages. I found the regional office and I called and I got through. And when she called me back, well, let's just say I got a very clear understanding of where the store manager got it from, because she did not want to listen. All I wanted was that the next time I came in, I got my normal level of service. That was it. Do we do that in Toastmasters? Do we assume that the reason somebody joined Toastmasters a year ago is why they're still in Toastmasters today? Probably not the case. Service is in the eye of the beholder. And are you meeting the real needs of your members? And excellence. There are so many stories of excellence, but I love this quote from Aristotle. He says, excellence is never an accident. It is the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent execution, represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. I just love this quote and speaks so well. Are you operating your club, your district, your area, your division with high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution, making wise choices? Because that determines your destiny. Now, values are really important. And when we fall out of our values, it hurts people. Some of you recognize this gentleman. For those of you who don't know, I'm an amateur cyclist. I just passed 250,000 miles on my bike this year. Not for the year, but lifetime. And Lance Armstrong was my hero. I rode with him once. It was a fabulous experience, but I saw some things in him that I didn't really like him. I still admired him, but I didn't really like him as a person. And then as his career went on, I saw other things, but I still was inspired by his story. Because after winning a world championship, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer, was given less than a 20% chance of living, and not only came back and made it back to the level of a professional cyclist, he won the Tour de France, the second American to ever win it. And then he won it again and again, and he ended up winning it 7 times in a row, more than anyone else, or so it seemed, because he was hiding a deep secret. Now, there had been rumors that he was using performance-enhancing drugs. And every time he would say, I've been tested more than any athlete in the history of the world, which was true. And I've never failed a drug test, which was almost true. And I believed him. Finally, he came out. Who else do you tell about? Lance Armstrong comes out to Oprah Winfrey. and admits that not only had he used performance enhancing drugs, he'd used it to such a level and in such a coordinated way that no one had ever seen it before. And not only that, that anyone who accused him, he destroyed their lives. Now, Lance has become a pariah, and many people have stopped watching professional cycling in the Tour de France sets. I haven't, because I understand that I'm not going to let one man lose that. But the problem I was running into when he came out was it destroyed me. Because I was so inspired by his story, and I started thinking these thoughts that, well, if the inspiration, the source of the inspiration was false, is what I accomplished with that inspiration also false? If my hero is false, is the love I have that's in common with his also false? Now, fortunately, with the help of some friends and in the cycling community mostly, I realized that his actions had nothing to do with me. And that what I'd accomplished with that inspiration was still very valid. Somebody asked me in a Q&A session, is like, what would I say to Lance? And I think what I would say to Lance today is, I wish you well. You know, my forgiveness of him means absolutely nothing to him, but it means everything to me. So I've had to move on, and I just don't listen to him anymore. And I still love the sport, even though there are problems in it, like there are in every walk of life. But winning isn't everything. Values are. Are you operating in a set of values? So leadership is exercising your influence in a positive and supportive manner towards the accomplishment of a worthwhile goal while following an agreed upon set of values. And I think most of would say this is a really good definition. And if we stopped here, I'd be okay. But as you can see, there's still some space left. And it may be, no, in my opinion, it is the most important part of leadership. Several years ago, I was at a conference hosted by the late, great Bob Proctor, the Toronto Tornado. And at lunch, the MC came up, goes, ladies and gentlemen, over lunch today, we want you to go out on the streets of Scottsdale, Arizona, find a stranger and take him or her to lunch, and then come back and tell your group about it. Now we've got about 800 people in the room. And so we got 800 people out on the streets of Scottsdale trying to get someone to go to lunch with them. And I don't know how they were doing, but for me, it was not going well. I'd walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to take you to lunch. And they kind of walk back. No, thank you. I'm not sure if they thought I was trying to ask them out on a date, convert them to my religion, or get them to sell Amway. But I was frustrated. Now, some of you know I am a get her done kind of guy. You give me a task, I'm going to get it done, and usually to a high level. And I was frustrated. I was thinking, I'm going to be the only one who comes back and failed to get someone to go to lunch with me. There's 800 people in the room. Yeah, what a thought. And then I remembered something my mom used to tell me. What she said was, Matt, in whatever you do, find the purpose. Now this is completely opposite what Tony Robbins or many people will tell you. They'll say, find your purpose. Simon Sinek, find your why and then go out and do. No, she said, do and find the why within it. And I said, well, okay, what do I want to do? Well, I don't want to look bad. Okay, I don't want to look bad in front of this group. And that's not a very good reason. You know what? I want to thank a veteran for his service. And I particularly want to thank somebody who is in the greatest generation, a World War II veteran. And so I start picturing a World War II veteran in my mind. And I know there are many women who served in World War II with great distinction, but I pictured an older gentleman, kind of looked like Walt Hudson there, you know, balding, white hair, a very wise face. I pictured a cane, a ball cap, and the word Arizona went across my mind, but I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? And I got up and I walked around the corner right in front of this restaurant. And Walt, he was right in front of me. The man I had pictured a very wise face, balding white hair, a cane, and a ball cap that said USS Arizona. And I walked up to him and said, "Sir, would you do the honor of going to lunch with me?" And he goes, "Why?" Well, I'm like, this is a good start. Okay, he's not running away. And I said, "Well, I made a decision a few minutes ago. I wanted to thank a World War II veteran for his service, and I saw your cap. Would you please go in the restaurant with me and have lunch?" And he looked at me and goes, "Well, my mama told me never turn down a free lunch." So we went inside, ordered our food, and started talking. And the gentleman's name was Bill. And I said, "Bill, I noticed your cap. Did you know somebody on the Arizona?" He goes, "Know someone? Hell, boy, I was on the Arizona." I will never forget that day. It was just before assembly, and we heard the sirens go off. And I thought it was a drill. And then everyone started pointing, and I looked out, and I saw a squadron of Zeros coming towards us. The next few minutes felt like hours and seconds at the same time, because there were torpedoes in the water, there were bombs falling, the smokestack blew up behind me, and I got thrown into the water. And as I was treading water, I watched my ship sink to the bottom of Pearl Harbor. I'll never forget that day. We sat there for what seemed like it was the afternoon in silence, in remembrance. Finally, after what felt like it was still too short, we started resuming our conversation. And after a few minutes, the waiter came by and he dropped the check off on the table, and I reached out and I picked it up, reached for my wallet, and all of a sudden, Bill snatched it out of my hands. And I looked there and said, "Bill, I told you I wanted to take you to lunch." He goes, "Yeah, I know what you said, boy. So what?" So I said the only thing that could come to my mind right then, "Well, my mama told me never turn down a free lunch." See, I almost missed an incredible life experience because I didn't understand the assignment. The assignment was not to go out and check off a box. The assignment was to connect with a fellow human being on a deep level, even if just for a few minutes. The lesson I've learned from this is heart-led leadership versus head-led leadership. Head-led leadership leads with objectives and goals and strategies. Heart-led leadership leads with people, relationships, and team harmony. Now, the reality is you need both. As a leader, you need to know when to lead with your heart and when to lead with your head. But what I have learned over and over again, and this is just an example, start with your heart. I'm not suggesting that objectives aren't important. They are. The Distinguished Club Program is a great measure of how well your club is doing at creating the positive and supportive experience for your members. Is it the only measure? No. Is it the best measure? I don't know, but it's an effective measure. The District Recognition Program is an effective measure of how well you are doing meeting the district mission. Is it the best? Can we make changes? Sure, but it's the best we have right now. But what I am suggesting is that none of that matters if you don't start with your heart. If your team at your club, your team at the district doesn't want to have a conversation at the end of the year, I don't care what your recognition status is. That is not a success. And if your team misses recognition by a little bit or a lot, but you have a great team cohesion and you look at each other and said, we did the best we reasonably could under these circumstances, that's a success that should be celebrated. It's not the only measure, but it is equally significant. Start with your heart. So our definition of leadership, my definition, and I'd really like you to think about this from the principles that are involved, not necessarily the exact words, but the definition I've come up is leadership is exercising your influence in a positive and supportive manner towards the accomplishment of a worthwhile goal while following an agreed upon set of values and starting with your heart. If you do this, if you embrace these principles or this definition, you may not always be right, but you will never be wrong. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was fabulous. And as a way of thanking Matt, let's let him know what inspired us, what we're taking away from his presentation. I have a whole list of things here, but I invite you to put one thing that you, or many things, that you'll be taking away from Matt's presentation today and applying it not only in your life, but in your club as quickly as possible. I loved that corrosion example that was unspeakable and powerful. Your use of metaphors, your use of stories and humor, Matt, you're an exceptional, exceptional speaker and obviously an exceptional leader. Look at all of these things in the chat, everyone. Take a moment to read some of these, challenging yourself, lead with your heart. They're coming in so fast, I can't even keep them on my screen here. But Matt, I invite you to save this chat so that you will have these to take with you. Thank you for your time and for being with us today. We're so excited that you will be
to work.
Our leader. Yes? Who just said that? Was it somebody who's going to be speaking next? No, good. Okay. We want you to stay here. We want you to stay here. Moving along with our agenda and our theme of This is Legacy, Leadership Legacy specifically, it is now my pleasure to introduce the first of three speakers who have a very long legacy in Toastmasters. We could spotlight Ralph Fearson at this time. Our next speaker is a longtime Toastmaster and past District 2 governor. Ralph has been a Toastmaster for 57 years, having first joined Totem 41 in 1966. Wow. Totem was the first Toastmasters club to have a name. Isn't that interesting? If you knew that, Totem was the first club in existence with the name, put a yes. And I'll bet I see no yeses in the chat, unless, of course, you're a member of Totem. Ralph has many honors. Among them are 2 distinguished Toastmasters awards, 2 DTMs. He was the Division Governor of the Year in 1984. That's around the time that I met Ralph for the first time. District 2 Communication and Leadership Award in 1990, and took District 2 to 66th, from 66th to 22nd place in the Toastmasters World Standings, and that was in 1988. He received a presidential citation from Toastmasters International in 2006. Ralph has sponsored and mentored many new Toastmasters clubs, including the first video club in District 2. He was way ahead of his time. Video Masters was the name of that club. The second was an advanced Toastmasters club many of you might recognize, called Extraordinaires, that is still in existence today, of which he is still a member, and the first Toastmasters club chartered in Moscow, Russia, called Free Speakers. Isn't that inspiring? Little known fact about Ralph is that he was not the first choice nominee for District 2 in 1987 or even the second, and that is another interesting story that we hope he'll uncover for us today. With his legacy presentation titled Beyond the Templates, please help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster and past District 2 Governor, Ralph Pearson. Ralph? And you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Oh, nope, you're not unmuted. There you go. You're good now, Ralph. Oh, now now your picture's gone. Ralph. There you go. Now we can see and hear you.
As if you haven't already figured it out, I'm not a technology guy. So you will never know what may happen in the course of my 10 minutes. Moving forward with being part of this great program that Rebecca has put together, Rebecca sent me several questions that I might use as part of what I can present to you. And they're kind of interesting questions to get started with this discussion. The first thing is that what brought you to Toastmasters? Well, like practically every other Toastmaster, I was invited by somebody. All this business about ads in the paper back in those days, or Google online, people don't go there looking for Toastmasters. They go to Toastmasters because somebody like you invited them to come and join Toastmasters. And that was the way it was back in the early days of Smedley, and that's the way it's always going to be. So just remember, you are the key of inviting and bringing people into Toastmasters. Her second question was, what point do you transition from speaker mentality to speaker leader mindset? Well, I don't think anybody knows, because it just happens. It's like asking your self or your children, when did you become an adult? Now, you may be taller than your parents, or your children may be taller than you are at 16, but they are definitely not an adult. So that question can happen a lot of different times, and it varies. But you will know it when it happens. And for me, I knew when I was in Russia, talking to Russians that wanted to be Toastmasters in 1989, that I had made that transition. I didn't have any doubt or any uncertainty about that. And I don't know when that happened. Just like when I was in Australia talking to Toastmasters in Brisbane 17 years later. These were experienced Toastmasters, and they were district officers. And I was very confident in talking to leaders who were already leaders. But I knew that I had the confidence, excuse me, as a leader and as a speaker, to talk to these people. So try to answer that question is different for everybody, and you really can't put a number on it or a date. It just doesn't happen. The third thing that I want to make as part of my presentation, beyond what Rebecca had outlined for me, is kind of to dovetail on what our international president-elect has talked about. And that's because I'm talking here to club officers. From your description of some of the people that are here, we have a lot of past club officers, past district officers. So there's a lot of experience here. But we are in a new era. And in a new era, we're going to have to make course correction. So for the next few minutes that I have left, I want to talk about values and benefits. What is the best advice I can give in my few minutes? So for those of you that are brand new club officers, those of you that have been coerced into being a club officer again, and some of you that are past district officers, you know what I'm talking about. And so I want to give you 3 or 4 tips, or what I call best advice, that might be useful in your building your club or clubs in the next 6 months, in the next year. And the first thing that I put on my list was values. And our international president-elect talked about this in several aspects. But what you present as a club every week is what the guests that you invite see. So your values have to be transmitted to not only your membership, but to the people that might become part of your membership. And so often I see things like, even today, where a club is at noon, 5 minutes before their noon meeting, they're trying to put together an agenda. And they're scrambling around. And so that's what a guest sees. And at the end of the meeting at 12:29, everybody's anxious to get out of there. So that is not very conducive to selling the value of Toastmasters to this guest. And that's what your club has to be doing every week, because you never know when you have a prospective member in your presence. The second thing is a technology thing. I think Zoom is valuable, particularly for club officers, but it's valuable in that club officers and the club leadership team needs to use that as a separate tool. Too often what I see with clubs, that they want to do their officer training or their club officer meeting as an addendum before or after the club meeting. So they give it very little time. If you set up a special time away from the club and away from your normal meeting, where your officers can get together, talk about long-range planning, and that's what you need, is long-range planning if you're going to be successful, and be able to present a course of action to your membership, so the membership knows what the club is planning to do 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and what they can expect as a club if they get a member or a guest to come as a member. So planning the value in a meeting with Zoom. I don't like Zoom. A live connection is more beneficial, but this is the world we live in. My third suggestion, and I pound on this all the time, is that at a club meeting, everybody is evaluated. Not just the person that is assigned to evaluate the speaker. Everybody does evaluation. Back in the days before the pandemic, everybody, particularly in the advanced club, was expected to do written evaluation. And so the speaker can go away with a broader understanding of the feedback, because we make the assumption, and everybody does it, that when the individual evaluator evaluates an individual speaker, that that's the universal agreement from everybody in the room. That is not true. There could be different opinions on this particular speaker by others in the room that are never heard of unless you have written evaluations or some way of communicating everybody's opinion and feedback to the member, the speaker, the speaker involved. So I'm very adamant. Now, my success in that is not 100%. In fact, it is not even 50%. But this is the way, not only do you as a club member develop into being a very effective analyst of a good speaker and a better speaker, but you give the speaker a better understanding how he or she reaches the audience with with the message that they have. And that is often overlooked very frequently. These days, others tell me, well, we don't need to do that. We can email it. Well, that's true. If everybody in your club gave the feedback they had and they emailed it to the members in their club that were speaking, that would be wonderful. But the reality is they don't. And so again, not only do the speaker members lose out on the benefits of getting this total picture, but the individual members lose out on the training that evaluation gives them. So I really encourage a club as part of your value added plan for this coming year to try to build automatic evaluations from everybody.
And Ralph, we're
Yes.
about, I don't know if you can see the timer, but you've been on red for a little bit here.
Well, I don't see any timer.
Okay.
So with that, one more thing. Rebecca asked me to say what my legacy would be. I don't have any legacy. It's like history. History repeats itself. Nobody learns from history. My only virtue and legacy is I've lived longer than most, and I'll probably be around another decade or so. So somebody 10 years from now will have an idea like Rebecca had, and they'll find me, and I'll just have to pull out the file that I got from Rebecca. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Ralph. You've covered a lot in your 10 minutes. And for those of you who are listening, and I saw a lot of smiles on the screen, would you please share with Ralph, we're talking about evaluations and giving feedback, one takeaway, one thing that you'll take away from his presentation today? What is one thing that you will take away from Ralph's presentation today? And the first thing that I'm going to say, Ralph, is that I disagree with you about technology. If you were teaching others how to use video in the early 90s in Toastmasters, you were way ahead on the technology curve. And not only that, Ralph, I happen to know that back when PowerPoint was new, you were teaching Toastmasters how to go from a flip chart to using PowerPoint. So there's another example. So you're fantastic with technology. And you'll have an opportunity also to ask Ralph any questions that you might have when we feature our legacy panel after we hear our two next legacy speakers. Our next legacy speaker is Janice Hom, who's coming all the way from the San Francisco Bay Area to be with us today. Janice is a distinguished Toastmaster. In searching for a female speaker to round out this panel, I put the word out, and then Janice reached out to me through Facebook, the favorite social media app for people over 50, which I can say from personal experience, this is true. What immediately impressed me about Janice in our first phone call was her incredible sense of humor, which you will experience in short order. Janice visits us today from District 4 in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she claims the spot of senior member, senior in experience only, of her home club, Asian Express Toastmasters. She has helped to establish numerous clubs in District 4 and has served in every club role, as well as several district positions. Here to share my continuous journey, please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Janice Hom.
Good evening, fellow or good morning, Toastmasters, because usually I have evening meetings. But good morning, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome. There is a Chinese saying that has always resonated with me. The saying is, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Now, my Toastmaster meeting did not begin with a single step. It actually began with a giant step toward a table full of food. You're probably going, really? Now, let me bring you back into time. 1978, yes, that many years ago. The date is Tuesday, September 12th. Oh, I remember it well. I had been invited to a potluck. Now, this potluck was invited by my friend was a member of the singing group. And he said, hey, what are you doing on a Tuesday? So I sort of said, okay, I'm available. I was young. I was brave. I was willing to sample other people's food. So I showed up. And now what my friend Herb Chow failed to mention was that he was district director, although a long time ago they were known as district governors. And he had founded a club, Asian Express Toastmasters. I was being invited to an open house event, big surprise. And he had said, well, since I found this club, we need members. And as you know, as all new clubs that started in 1977, a year ago, they needed new members. They needed an infusion of new members. And I was part of the new infusion. Let me confess, I'm an introvert. I am not much of a club joiner. But yet there was something in Toastmasters that totally appealed to me. It could have been the educational program. It could have been the support, the fellowship I felt in that room that night. It could possibly be getting over the stage fright that I would probably get. It usually is really not good, especially when you're a wedding singer, okay? Or maybe it was the opportunity to have dinner at different Chinese restaurant every time we met. Guess which one I liked. So it took less than 2 meetings, 2 people that asked me, so you want to join Toastmasters? It didn't take me that long. And yes, I joined. And so in October 1978, I became a member of Asian Express Toastmaster Club 2203, District 4. And this club has been my home club for the past 4 decades. Now, this morning, I'm going to be sharing with you the opportunities that I've gained over the years being a Toastmaster. First, I'm going to talk about the educational opportunities. Number 2, I'm going to talk about the leadership opportunities. And 3, of course, I'm going to talk about what is beyond Toastmasters. Yes, there is life beyond Toastmasters. Don't let anybody tell you there is. Let's first talk about the first thing, the educational opportunities. Now, let's be honest, I didn't think I could stay around this long. I thought 2-3 years, that's the most I should stick around, and then I'll just move on like anything. Well, I thought I would just absorb everything that I could possibly get from this group, then learn how to give meaningful presentations, and last but not least, gain control of my stage fright. I gave it, as I said, 2 to 3 years, but what I learned was I got to give speeches that were informative, and I learned from it. I learned something in the process. I learned how, of course, you will all learn how to do the opening, the body, and the conclusion, but we also learned the process, absorbing information, making it part of you, making that sure that when you're giving a presentation, that you are part of it, not just giving this informational one. It's too easy saying, well, John F. Kennedy was born and blah, 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 blah. But if you said, I was there, not watching the funeral of John F. Kennedy, if you said something like that, that gives a more personal touch. And so I learned to do that. Then, and the things that I also learned was being a history buff, I learned a lot of other stuff. This is my favorite speech. This is like the past decade. This is one of my favorite speeches. I give a speech about goats, about sheep, and an almost war between the United States and Canada. That's my favorite speech. Why? Because all this particular kerfuffle could have been avoided had there been a land surveyor that can actually draw a decent map. Who knew? But if you ever want to know about that, so ask me later on, and I'll probably tell you what the war was all about. Anyway, so one of the things I also learned by educational opportunities was how to evaluate, how to really give good feedback, even though the speaker might not really want to hear that. Let me give you an example. I knew a person who gave a presentation who was, well, let's just say he is very religious, and he expected us to be persuaded to take on his religious stance at the end of the meeting. We couldn't quite take that stance because he was trying to convince us that if we followed his teachings, we could avoid being one of 3 million people in hell. Now, I've read the Bible, and I swear I've never seen that statistic. Well, by the way, the speech project required facts and figures. He used none of the above. At least he thought he was. At the end of the meeting, I got best evaluator. Yay, me. All right. So that's one of the things I learned, is that not everybody will accept wholeheartedly your evaluation, but you give one to the best of your ability. You give evaluations where you give, as Matt says, 6 goods and an area of improvement each. And I like that. That makes everybody feel really good. Learn something. So number 2, my leadership opportunities. Now, despite being the eldest of 4 siblings, you would think I'd be the bossy one. Nope. But in Toastmasters, I got over my shyness. I felt that, okay, as I said, 2 to 3 years, I'll just be underneath, I'll be just above the surface of the water and just paddle away and then be gone. No. They caught me. They said, oh, Janice, why did you be secretary? Well, let me tell you, over the next few decades, I have been training secretaries forever. So there you go. So as I said, I got over my shyness and I wound up swimming in the sea of leadership opportunities. I wound up being, as a club officers, I served in every position. I served every year at the club level. I served at the area level 4 times as an area governor. So that was the official title. I was a division lieutenant governor. By the way, no one's ever used that title again. They're now known as division directors. And on the district level, I've served many years as a conference chair, as contest chair, and twice as district secretary. So do I know what I'm doing? Not really, no. Sorry. Anyway, I got the opportunity. This is my favorite. I got my opportunity to be a co-chair of a conference for Region 2. And by the way, we no longer do conferences anymore. Darn. So you're probably asking, so what is your most favorite thing that you ever want to do? Being a mentor. Now, I didn't think I would be teaching anybody. I don't see myself teaching. I see myself as coaching somebody to help them, guide them through. I guide them through the light. No, I basically take them over to wherever destination you want to go to. They want to be a good speaker, great, I'm going to help you. If you want to be a good leader, fine, I'm going to be there with you too. So that's one of the things I want to do. And so that's 2 things, the educational and the leadership. So what about the next? Number 3, beyond Toastmaster opportunities. Yes, there are. The moment they find out that you can do things, that you are organized, well, they start offering you these interesting opportunities. Case in point, I'll offer you 2. 1, a Toastmaster in Oakland, California said, hey, you want to help me with this project? Next thing you know, I am coordinating a dinner, a cultural program, and a parade. Now, I've done 2 out of 3. I've never done a parade. But what I learned in the 4 years that I did parades, Chinese New Year parades, that it's almost like doing a wedding procession. You just have to know where you put everybody and you know where to put the bride and groom in the right place. Do not put them in the middle of the procession. They're supposed to be up in front. So there you go. And the other opportunity that I've done is somebody offered me the opportunity of running for backstage for a production. And I just said, hey, I've never done that. I'll take the opportunity. What happens? At the end of the production, I give her 3 pages of evaluation notes. Yes, I'm that good. And when it happens, it backfires on me. Yes, for the next 3.5 decades, I wind up being the pageant director of the Miss Asian Global Pageant. Oh, Lord, why? So at the end of the rainbow, I find that whenever there's an opportunity offered to you, say yes. Don't say, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do it right. I don't know if I could do it. You can do it. Because if you say yes, you have the opportunity of asking for help. Don't be brave and say, I could do everything. If you are, oh, well, we can talk about politics another time. I'm just going to talk to you about the leadership of Congress. So as I said in the beginning, my favorite saying is, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and has always served as a compass in my life. And so I feel that in order to get anywhere in life, just take the first step there and then continue on your journey to being a great Toastmaster. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster of the Day.
Fantastic. Didn't I tell you she was funny, charming, funny, the whole package? And we definitely want to know more about the pageant director experience. That'll be my first question when we get to our panel. So just be ready for that, Janice. Thank you so much. Let's take a moment now. I already see some things in the chat. This swimming in the sea of leadership, that excellent quote. What was one thing that you will take away from Janice Hom's speech today? One thing. Look at all of these things, Janice. Be sure to save the chat because they are piling in. Just say yes, say yes. And I loved what you had to say about mentorship also. Very well crafted, very well structured, very well organized. You took us down the highway, that leadership legacy highway, paved with inspiration. And thank you so much, Janice. And we'll hear more from you momentarily. But first, it is my great pleasure to welcome our third and final legacy speaker to the stage, my good friend, Walter Hudson. Walter and I saw each other after this COVID break recently on his 92nd birthday. I was a day early for the party, so I missed it. I was so excited to go. I jumped the gun there, but we had a great conversation, and it was actually my discussion with Walter that ignited the idea for today's legacy panel. I think it's important for us to hear from our legacy leaders and learn from them, preserve these stories. And guess what? We're preserving this because it is recorded. Walter lives in my neck of the woods up here in Mount Vernon, or actually, I guess I should say my neck of the tulip fields, because that is the Skagit Valley, what Mount Vernon and the Skagit Valley are known for up here. Not so much woods, but tulips. Walter joined Toastmasters when he was a young man in the Army. Matt's story about, did you catch that, Walt, when he was looking for a veteran and then he looked at you on the screen and said someone like Walt? I thought that was perfect. That was perfect. So Walt joined Toastmasters when he was in the Army. He's been a Toastmaster for 50 years, with 1 year serving in a military, was it a military club in Iran? Was it a military Toastmasters club? Yep. He's been a member of 10 different clubs in the area and has held the area director position twice. Back then, we called it area governor. I first met Walt in 2017. He was a charter member of a corporate club in the area that no longer exists, but has been folded into another club that I'm a member of because of COVID. What I noticed immediately is that the members in that club, that new club, so mostly it was brand new Toastmasters in that club, they clung to Walter, his experience, his calm leadership, always there to be helpful. And I came up with this metaphor for you, Walt. I'm just going to read it. They clung to Walter's influence like white lint on a black wool skirt, but in a good way, not like you want to, get it off. It's just like, it's great, right? Just attracted to you. Walter would come early. He would stay late. He would tidy up, put everything back in its place. He was our sergeant at arms. He was very methodical and orderly and always did everything with a kind and calm demeanor. Walt has a way of speaking and leading and supporting others that makes room for their growth. When new members come to Toastmasters, you can always hear Walt say, like clockwork, you'll learn to speak and it'll change your life. That's Toastmasters. Here to share his legacy story, please help me welcome my good friend, Walter Hudson.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'd like to make one correction to your introduction. I've never been in the Army. I spent 28 years in the Air Force.
Oop, okay, that was a big oversight. Sorry about that, Walt.
No problem. Toastmasters has absolutely changed my life. I was sitting at my desk in Ramstein, Germany in 1971 reading the Daily Bulletin, and there was a notice in the back on the unofficial, said, "Fly in formation, come to Toastmasters." I thought, what are they talking about? So I went to the Toastmasters Club for the sole purpose of learning what they meant by fly in formation. And they told me the reason they put that notice in was that we want you to have butterflies, but we'll teach them to fly in formation. So about halfway through that meeting, I became frightened. They were going to ask me to join. And these people were professionals. So I spent the next week wondering why it frightened me. So I went back a week later and I said, how much does it cost to join? Because if I wait till the end of the meeting, I'll get cold feet. Well, I joined. And the first thing I learned was to listen. And it led me to a promotion that I use for Toastmasters. There are 4 basic methods of communication: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. One is not taught in school. Toastmasters will teach you to listen. And there's been many things happen in the years that I've been in Toastmasters, and one of them was a note that somebody gave me that said, how can you expect us to remember what you say if you have to have notes to remember yourself? I thought, wow. So I quit making notes. I have no notes prepared for this at all. My daughter asked me the other day, are you ready for the presentation on Saturday? I said, sure, I've been preparing for 50 years. So what's going to come to my mind, I don't know, but I'm open. One thing that I did learn in Toastmasters is that they practice Christian values. And this is where I started my journey with Christianity. Now, I'm a fan of an author by the name of C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was an atheist the first half of his life. Then he spent the next half of his life trying to tell people where he was wrong. Now, when I joined Toastmasters, I was sure that I was always right. And if you disagreed with me, I was very happy to explain to me your error. Toastmasters has changed me in the listening area to know when people disagree with me. I will stop my speaking and ask them why they disagree with me. Well, most people will say, oh, I'm just listening. I said, no, you disagree with me. Please tell me, because I welcome knowing what your opinion is. I've also learned the fact that everybody has a different background. Everybody listens through their grid of experience. And if what you hear is the intention of the speaker, then you have perfect communication. So Toastmasters has been monumental in my life. I have no desire to become a district Toastmaster, a distinguished Toastmaster. I've attained the rank of ATMB, for those of you who have been in Toastmasters for a while. And It's really enlightening for me. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Walt. Let's take one moment now to tell Walter, to share with Walter one thing that you will take away from his speech today. One thing that you'll take away. I loved the story of how you were feeling in that very first Toastmasters meeting way back when. I think most of us can relate to that. Did you join? Did you join then on that very first meeting? You joined before you left the room?
No,
Is that
I've
right?
joined in the second meetings.
In the second meeting. Okay. Wow. Great. Okay. You see the chat there, Walter?
Yes.
All these wonderful things. So we'll save the chat so you'll have that to take with you. And now let's invite our legacy leaders center stage, please, because now we will take some of your questions. You can put a question in the chat, and if you have a specific person that you would like to direct it to, put their name in there as well. What questions might you have now that you have these three wise people all in the same space? Who would you like to hear from, and what questions might you have? And I'll start off. I do have one for Ralph, and this goes back to the flip chart versus the PowerPoint. And Ralph, you are muted right now. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself there. Yes, the Able Toastmaster Bronze Award is required after 6 advanced manuals. Wow, there we go. Okay, Ralph, you are not unmuted yet. And as soon as I see that you are, I will ask you this question. I don't know if our host is able to assist. Is it possible to assist Ralph in unmuting?
How am I now?
Oh, there, I
Yeah,
can hear
just
you now.
unmuted.
I can hear you now. Yeah. So tell us
Okay.
about this teaching Toastmasters how to use PowerPoint, how you did it, and what your best advice today in using PowerPoint slides.
Well, back when I started and made the transition from flip charts to PowerPoint, we had a projector and a screen, and I had bought some software, so I knew how to use the PowerPoint. And PowerPoint is just a technology tool like the old overhead slides. And I've been doing the overhead
Oh,
slides.
Are you talking about transparencies?
Yes,
Some people don't even know what those are. Transparencies.
yeah. Well,
That has gone the way of the fax machine by and large, right? So can
Yeah,
you explain what a transparency is for those who don't know what it is?
well, it's a acetate slide that you can print in your printer, and you put it on a machine, which I had, and project it on the screen. And so just like if you're working live with your PowerPoint on a screen using your remote, it was just an earlier transit. In fact, interestingly, when I went to Russia with my 25 Toastmasters, I took that projector along, and we were able to have a power conversion. I was surprised that I hadn't thought about that, but we're able to use those slides in the overhead system at that time. So that was interesting.
That's great. Lugging that big thing with you. That's
Oh, yeah,
that's
that
quite
was-
the
totally
sight.
insane.
We do have a question that
That's
Oh.
the choice of not knowing any better. So
yes, right. Imagine now it's all on a phone, right? It's just crazy. It's just crazy to think about. We do have a question, and I'm going to bounce it around that came in. Question, and I'll start with Janice for this and then go to Walt. How have you transitioned from live meetings to online in terms of, I don't know where that sound is coming from, I guess maybe one of us, in terms of audience awareness and interaction? How have you transitioned from live meetings to online in terms of audience awareness and interaction? Well, Janice, since you are still active in Toastmasters, we'll ask you that question. I know that Ralph is too, but Walt is currently on a hiatus.
Got it. Okay, well, for me, fortunately, the transition wasn't too bad, actually, because I can tell you, bringing you back to March 2020, after when we were all set, when they all said, we are going to stay in, you cannot leave. Oh, well, I thought, oh my God, are we going to be able to survive? Then I get these little invitations, thank God for email. They said, by the way, you can go through Zoom. And so after a while, you are able to, it's a matter of basically being able and being willing to adjust to the new, and I hate that term, but the new normal, where we are constantly talking to each other in a screen. You're talking at people. And I miss being able to be in a room and chatting with people and knowing that whether or not whatever I say to somebody, I can look them in the eye and say, aha, I either got it right, didn't get it right, and how am I going to be able to convince somebody or persuade somebody of my point of view, or am I going to be persuaded by their point of view? I think that how do we transition? I think it's just basically it's a matter of acceptance. I think that's one of the things of being able to transition. I have a member, in fact, going back to Herb Chow, who I mentioned earlier, he's deaf. He cannot transition. He's not able to transition to the new normal now. So it's tougher for him. Back to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We do have I guess this really isn't a question for Walt. Walt, was there any difference when you left the service and joined a Toastmasters club that wasn't in the service? Was there any difference that you saw between the two?
Yes, there was a big difference. We didn't have women. They didn't allow them. So I waited 6 weeks to find that out. Then I made a presentation what they were missing by not having women, presented a resolution, lost by 1 vote. My brother had joined the Toastmasters. He made the same resolution the next week, and then it passed.
Wow. The resolution to have women join your club.
That was the requirement at that time.
And when women first joined your club, was it one at a time? Was it several? How did it grow and how did it change as a result of having women in your club? And I'm going to ask Ralph the same question. So Walt, go ahead.
Oh, it varied. There was no pattern. It just varied.
How did it change the club atmosphere for you?
Tremendously. Because women don't generally discuss philosophy with men, and they do in Toastmasters. You can't take it out of your speaking.
I see. Yes, that's great. Fantastic. Ralph, do you remember whatever club that you were in, build us that picture and tell us the story of women coming into that club?
I don't remember. All I know is in Totem, it was probably a real big change, because it was very all men, really. So
okay,
I think it probably what didn't take place until after it was actually official at international. So.
And you can be transparent with us. Tell us, were you in favor of allowing women into the club at that time? We're not going to judge you. So go ahead and tell us.
Well, I've always liked women. So.
Okay. Great, good. Now, Janice, being a woman who joined Toastmasters early on, what was that like from your point of view? And this will be our last question.
Frankly, it was not a problem because Toastmasters officially allowed women in about 1973. I checked history, sorry. And so by the time I arrived in Toastmasters, my group was pretty much 50-50. And there was nobody that had the nerve to say, oh no, women cannot take any leadership, women should not be heard. Our group was more of, no, I don't think so. I think one of the best things is that a lot of the women in the groups, our Toastmaster group consisted of accountants. We had community leaders and we had the general public, which is me. And so there was already women leaders already. And so if you basically stood in our way and said there's no leadership, we weren't even in the group in the first place. So that's how there was no problem. There was no stigma being in a group like that.
Yes. And one last question for Janice, because I promised I needed to know the answer to this about your pageantry experience.
Yes.
How do you infuse your Toastmasters, what you've learned in Toastmasters, into the way that you work with pageants?
Okay. One of the things I train. So we train in public speaking. All the women that participated in there have to give a platform speech. They have to do a self-introduction. So that's the thing, is we have to teach them how to give a presentation. Not all of them are very confident in there. So we have to infuse confidence and work with each of them. So the way I use Toastmasters is one, learn to delegate. It's tough. You have to learn to delegate, but you also learn to get everybody confident in giving presentation. I run very strict. And by the way, agendas. Dear God, have an agenda, because if you don't have an agenda and they can't follow it, it doesn't work for them. So that's one of the things that a lot of the pageant organizations are doing, is they really make sure that all the contestants can communicate, because that's how they are. They're representing their organization.
Yes, that's excellent. Now, for all three of our legacy speakers today, some of you may be thinking, wow, I would like to invite one of these folks to my club as a guest speaker. Aren't some of you thinking that? Yeah. I'm thinking that. There are some questions that we don't have time to answer. And so, for example, Matt, who has another question for Janice in the chat, if you three wouldn't mind sharing your email in the chat so that the rest of the audience can get in touch with you and invite you as a guest speaker to their meetings. Let's keep this legacy inspiration going down Inspiration Avenue, our two-way street. Let's give a big round of applause for our legacy speaker panel. Thank you so much for bringing your light and your wisdom to our Toastmasters Leadership Institute today.
Can I say something to Walt? Walt, you're an old geezer like me. I'm a Vietnam veteran, so Army. So just to keep that in mind.
Excellent. We have two veterans on stage today. Thank you so much, both of you, for your service. And now we are going to segue to, we're going to take a left turn and then go a little north, inviting our next speaker to the stage before we go into breakout rooms for our club officer training. And the reason that if we could mute everybody, please, that is not speaking. Thank you so much. Just want to make sure it's quiet for everyone. When was this? Oh, at our conference. Yes, I attended Angela Barris's session on the Speakers Bureau, the District 2 Speakers Bureau, where I heard Becky Fisher talk about speechcraft. And it got me thinking. Angela and I spoke afterward, and I said, you know, her philosophy, and I think it's a great one, both Becky and Angela's philosophy, is to look at speechcraft, it used to be looked at as a way of getting your Distinguished Toastmaster Award. Really, that's how I looked at it way back when, because I've done Speechcraft twice, and that was one of the options that you could choose to get your Distinguished Toastmaster Award, and it still is. But thinking about Speechcraft in a bigger way, how would it allow us to bring in new members? How would it allow our members to learn to speak in a professional capacity, to teach? And when you teach, you learn, don't you? The best way to learn something new is to teach it, because that really means you need to be prepared. And so how do we use these two together to build our clubs at a time when a lot of clubs are struggling? Yes, it's a little bit of work, and we're going to hear that from Becky, but the outcomes, the growth, the opportunities, the club growth is phenomenal. So Becky Fisher, our Distinguished Toastmaster, Becky Fisher, is going to tell you all about this after I introduce her. If we could please bring Becky Fisher to the stage. Becky has been a member of Toastmasters since 2013. She joined Toastmasters because of Speechcraft, which was coordinated by Leanne Tangelo in Conservatively Speaking, her home group. Since then, she has grown in leadership. Her last service was club, easy for me to say, club growth director in District 2. She works as an advice nurse for Kaiser Permanente. In her spare time, when she is not doing Toastmasters and church work, she is visiting her 7 children, chasing her 4 grandchildren, gardening, and rescuing orchids. And one of those was mine, I believe. So please give a warm welcome to our Speechcraft expert today, Becky Fisher. And Becky, you are muted. For some reason, I cannot hear you.
How's that?
That's
Is that
much better.
All
Yes.
right. Helps when you don't mute yourself, right? Thanks so much for this opportunity to speak about Speechcraft. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. My home group was dragging. We were, I don't know if it was COVID fatigue or if it was Zoom fatigue, or we were just tired of hearing each other talk. I'm not sure what it was. It might have been a combination of all of those. And I saw this alarming trend that we were having problems with, filling our roles each week, having people sign up for giving speeches. We would have people come and go, guests would come and go and come and go, but they'd never join because we really weren't putting on an number 1 meeting. And because we were a healthy group, I was very alarmed by this trend. And I thought, what can I do to help? Then I kind of did some research and I rediscovered the Speechcraft program. And I hadn't done the online program that's now become online. And I thought, I'm going to go for this. So I met with my vice president of education. I talked with my home group. They all let's do it, And so we started an 8-week Speechcraft group. So what is Speechcraft? How does it work? And what is in it for us? That's the 3 questions I'd like to talk about today. First, what is Speechcraft? Speechcraft is simply a 2, 4, or 8-week session where you bring in speakers, which talk about how to figure out a speech topic, vocal variety, body language, powerful words, evaluations, giving and receiving feedback. All these are covered in the Speechcraft Basic program. And I am going to put a thing in the chat later at the end for you guys to click on to take you to even more information about Speechcraft. So don't despair, it'll be there. So after meeting with my vice president of education, we decided to do it right at the time, the 8 weeks prior to the Toastmasters end of our quarter so that we could get credit for new members. And how we marketed this is that we had all of our members go out and invite their friends. Just come to the first group, come to the first meeting where we talked about finding a speech topic. And I presented that one. But what was so cool about it is everybody that came actually signed up to join. So what we did is we offered it for free for non-Toastmasters if they would join our group, which was $45, which normally the Speechcraft program is about $50. It is $50 for 5 participants. And we signed up 5 new members. Boom. What was so cool about that was that we got 5 people that really weren't speakers. They wanted to improve their public speaking skills, but they really didn't know how. And the Speechcraft program teaches you how to do that. As a coordinator, I invited people from the Speakers Bureau, personal friends, outside speakers that could come into our group. And each week after that, we had a total of 6 speakers every single week for the next 8 weeks. We actually had to extend our club time by 10 minutes each day to be able to fit it all in. Now, how does it work? It works by using a separate website that you sign on to. It's actually, you get Pathways credit for doing Speechcraft for your speeches if you're a participant. So that's cool also, because now you've already done your first 7 Pathways speeches. But you do have to sign up separately, and it is a separate website that the Speechcrafters go to. And it has videos, it has information, it has everything you need, not only as a coordinator, but as a participant to be able to go through each of these 7 topics. And it's a very rich content. The videos are very well done, put on by Toastmasters. So I wanted to cut over to a Speechcraft participant that actually attended our group to hear his experience on what the Speechcraft program was. This is William Liu. He was one of our participants. Shauna.
And Shauna's going to spotlight my video to show William. You could even spotlight Becky and William side by side if you'd prefer. Shauna, there we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is William. I immigrated for my children's education. And unfortunately, the pandemic came. I stayed at home and only spoke Chinese with my family. My English was getting worse. I had a hard time passing the job interview. And one of our friends, Sudi, invited my wife, Peggy, and I to join the conservatively speaking Toastmaster. And we were lucky enough to join the wonderful Speechcraft program that was led by Becky. Peggy and I practiced our speech, and gave feedback to each other. We got a lot of knowledge, helpful feedback, and encouragement from many club members. I also started to practice my job interview with Peggy. I found a good pace to talk to people, pay attention to my body language and eye contact, etc. I finally got my first job in the US during the Speechcraft program. I would say joining Toastmaster is one of the best investments in my life. And it's just the beginning. I look forward to growing with Toastmaster. Thank you so much. Now back to it.
Now, what problems did it solve for us? I cannot tell you how the energy in the club changed. People were actively engaged every week. We had no problems getting speakers. We had our speakers there. The club members that were even newer were able to participate and sharpen their skills. This program works. It worked for us, and it can work for you too. Thank you.
And thank you, Becky. And so that all of you know, Becky is going to be joining the Vice President Education breakout room. Is that right, Becky? Because we know membership. Vice President membership. Okay, so those of you who are going to be going into the Vice President membership room shortly, you will have an opportunity, and Becky's already spoken with our leader for that room to talk about how Speechcraft could be used in your club to increase membership. Linda Vorthman is going to be in our Vice President Education room. Linda was also very involved in Speechcraft, knows it inside and out. You'll be able to talk about in that room how Speechcraft can be used as an educational tool within your club. Then finally, Angela Barris, who also was very, very involved in this excellent Speechcraft where you just heard from William, she will be facilitating the President's Club Officer training. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to get all your questions answered about Speechcraft and more coming right up. And that brings me to our next session, which is the club officer training. You'll be in there for 50 minutes. When we come back, I will have a couple more inspirational thoughts to share with you about this idea of legacy and holding on to it as you move forward in your day, your week, your year, your life. But first, it's time for you to get some officer training. Check, so you can check off that box and get your points in the DTM and learn from others. In the past, when we've done officer training, we've had breakout rooms where you can go and have discussions and then come back to your main room. Today, you will all be in a room together. Whichever room you choose, click on the breakout room toggle at the bottom of your screen, and then you will choose which room to join to get your training. And the way I like to think of how the training is going to work today, kind of the old-fashioned way we used to do it when we met in person, was we would sit in a big circle and we would discuss and share ideas about how to do the role to the best of our ability and get information and inspiration and ideas from other people. So your facilitator will create that sort of feeling in the room today. So I'm sure it'll be highly engaging. And then we'll see you back in 50 minutes. Do they get a short break? Oh, we do have a short break. Yes, we have a 5-minute break in between. So you can take your break, come back, choose your breakout room. You'll be in there for 50 minutes. You'll come back to the main room, have some thoughts, and hear some final announcements from our district leaders. And of course, we're going to give you a survey. All right, 5 minutes on the clock for a break, and then I'll see you back here in about an hour.
Gary has a question.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yes.
I was under the understanding that if we're in two clubs and we're holding two different positions, is there a combo, or how should we go about that today? Thank you.
Does our program,
Yes,
who would like to answer that?
I can answer that. If you are holding two different officer positions, then you will just need to choose the one that you want to attend. You will still get credit for both positions, but just choose one to attend. We are going to have other trainings all throughout this training season. So if you, and they will be uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to see training on another position, you'll have an opportunity later on in the year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And those of you in the rooms, you know that you have sharing and chat in your room if you plan on sharing slides once you get to your room. Any other questions? Okay, see you back in 5 minutes. Then I'll see you back in another hour. 50
And,
minutes.
there's some questions going into the chat. Where are the
Oh.
breakout rooms?
Okay, if you
If
click
you're
on,
your phone, you may have some issues with finding that. Otherwise, if you are on your phone and you want a specific breakout, to pop it into the chat. Otherwise, it's at the bottom of your screen, breakout rooms. Click on that and you can choose which one when you come back from the break.
yeah, you should see 7 different rooms. Vice President Education, President. If you click that little icon, you'll see a little red indicator, knowing that's the number of people that are in this meeting that you can click and join a room. If you don't
have any
see
trouble,
that,
just stay on and we'll get you
Yeah.
shifted over.
it's right next to the reactions. It's on the right next. So there's on the bottom, on the left side, sorry, the right side. It's to the left of the reactions button.
And Linda says, if you have 0 icons at the bottom of your screen, just hit the Alt button
Aha,
on your keyboard.
good tip, Linda. So Alt shows it and hides it.
I guess so.
I want to try that.
I don't know on a Mac if it's different, but a PC, yes, that shows and hides.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it must be different on a PC. Okay, cool. Anybody else, if you're having trouble, unmute and let us know so we can help you.
I'm using an iPad and I'm not seeing any breakout rooms.
iPad.
We can, Shauna, can you tell us what breakout you would like to go to? And
Oh yeah, we'll just move you into the room. Yeah, good.
who is that?
This is Diane Hitzel. I was going to
Diane.
go to the Vice President of Education.
All right, I will move you now.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
This
Shauna,
is Katie. This is Katie Munoz, and I'm having the same problem. I would
Where would you like to go?
to the darn it, president room.
President, sending you now.
Thank you.
And I need to go to the president's room. I don't see anything on my screen to choose that.
Okay, I got you, Angela.
Thank you.
and Angela said that she needs Roxanne to be made a co-host. Shauna, would you please?
Yes.
Steve Kennedy must have. And when you leave the room, I didn't tell people this, don't click leave the meeting, leave the room. Otherwise you'll have to sign in again.
Maybe you can pop into the rooms, Rebecca, and tell everybody
Christina,
that.
yes. Christina, so there's a list of people in the chat that need help, Shauna, Christina McKenna.
Yeah,
okay.
So I have Angela automatically assigned and it's not letting me move her.
That's interesting. Angela, maybe you need to log out and log back in again, and then you can be reassigned. I think that would be the way to do it. Is that possible, Angela?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do a do-over.
Christina.
Okay, I will pop into the rooms. Let's see. Oh,
Okay, Christina's been
I
moved.
will.
Tiny, which room did you need to go to?
If you're talking to me, Tammy, I need to go VP of membership. I don't have anything on the screen that you have addressed. Zero.
Okay, I'm
except
sending you
for
now.
text message. Sweet.
Toastmasters. Okay, let me know when everyone's back in here. Shauna, if you would please. Matt Romero and Vera TV, who couldn't stay long because he is on his way from Nashville at this very moment. Before I turn control of this meeting to our incoming district director, Tina Tate, I'd like to leave you with a question and something to think about. Here's the question part. How is it possible for this candle to burn for eternity? How is it possible? I'll let you think about that. Did you come up with this answer? To share it with another before its light goes out. This is how I think about inspiration and legacy. Our inspiration that we share with each other in Toastmasters through our stories, through our service. And if we go back to where we started today, the question that I asked, how do you want to be remembered? If you were the videographer in the back of your own memorial service, what stories do you want to hear from those that you touched? And those stories, when they're told about you and how you affected the lives of others, will fill the room with this light of inspiration, and a part of you will be part of people who may not have even met you face to face. And you will become part of their legacy as well. It's been my absolute pleasure to serve you today at this Toastmasters Leadership Institute. And with that, please welcome our incoming district director, Tina Tate.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's wonderful. Wonderful job in leading this TLI. Thank you all for being here, for getting your credit for your clubs. I hope to see a lot more Super 7s this year. So please let everybody know about all of the upcoming trainings. There's lots of opportunities for your club officers to get trained. One of the things that I want to tell you about today is my phrase for next year. The thing that I would like us to focus on as a district, and that is authentic leadership. Being authentic means to be real, to be genuine. It also means to be vulnerable and realize that we're not perfect, none of us. Toastmasters is a learning lab. We're all students, we're all learning and elevating ourselves in our work world and our family life. And when you can be authentic and realize that it's okay to fail, then your members in your club, in your clubs, will get so much more out of Toastmasters. Let's make sure everyone feels welcome, that everyone feels valued. And please, please, please be your authentic selves. I want to also let you know that we are in search of area directors, and an admin manager is what I need. But we really, really, really need some area directors. If you're looking to get your district distinguished Toastmaster this year, you're going to need a district leadership role. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you are interested in learning more about that, having a discussion with me about what that might mean, I'd be happy to talk with you and learn more about you as well. One of my goals this year is to learn more of the people in District 2. I don't know many of you, and I want to know you more. So please send me an email. Let's have a conversation and let's find out what your goals are. Linda, do you have any announcements?
Oh, yes. Tina did mention Super 7. For those of you who are not yet aware, that is an incentive that District 32 provides your club. $50 in reimbursement for particular club expenses. So everyone here, you're on your way. All you have to do is have 7 officers from your club and you've completed Super 7. Back to you, Tina.
Thank you, Linda. Tommy, did you have anything you wanted to say quickly?
I certainly do. Good morning or good afternoon. Not sure which one it is right now. I'm excited about being the club growth director for District 2 next year, but I'm also excited about having the opportunity to work with some of you. We have a lot of leaders here. Are you interested in starting a new club? Are you interested in mentoring or sponsoring a new club? Coaching a current club? We have so many clubs that need to recover after these past 2 years. So many roles are open right now. If any of this speaks to your heart and passion and desire in Toastmasters, I would love to hear from you today as soon as possible. A number of roles and committees are still open to be filled. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Many of you have my old email. This is a new email. So I ask that you please update your email with this email. And I look forward to hearing from you and working with you next year. Tina?
Thank you, Tommy. All right, we have a survey for you to do. The surveys really help us to improve these trainings. It's very important. So I would ask that you all please fill it out. Shauna, can you put the link to the survey in the chat for me? There it is. Please take a few minutes and fill out that survey. Rebecca, would you like to wrap it up with a final word?
The word is think about how you want to be remembered, those words, how you want to be described. And if we go back to the very, very top of the chat where you had a choice between what combination of words, of course, we expanded the list: kind, compassionate, respectful, charming, poised and professional. You are all of that and more because why? You are Toastmasters. Thank you for coming today.